and quarantine, I think the biggest issue for us is what? Social isolation, right? I mean, a sense of feeling isolated. Yes, there's opportunities to connect, right? But they're more limited. There's opportunities to connect electronically, like we're doing today, virtually. There's opportunities to connect with some family members, but it's very limited. That's the reality of it, and that's what we have to acknowledge. The University of Chicago, I want to point out, really interesting study, found that 31 found that pre-COVID, right, let me say this, after COVID and after the pandemic and everything shut down, or now we're reopened but kind of semi-shut down, is that 14% of Americans report being happy with their lives, okay, after COVID. But I want to point out something really interesting. They looked at the number of what it was, and this actually number is more interesting for me than the 14%. They looked at the number before COVID and they found that it was 31% of Americans are happy. Okay? So that to me signals that there is already a lingering unhappiness. Okay? There's already a sense of something's missing in life. And in the US, among other places in the world, more so than other places in the world, we have access to so many materials. And I think my theory is that we've been filling this void with other, right? One of the Sufi mashayikh would say that the human being is composed of two parts, the jasad and the ruh, the body and the soul. The body, it needs food, it needs materials, it needs sleep, it needs nourishment, it needs it needs a comfortable bed, right? It needs all of these materials, okay? But the spirit, as Dr. Rahimi said, it needs dhikrullah. It has a striving and affinity for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what's happening is that you cannot, just like with dhikr, you cannot go starving, right? And just feed yourself with dhikr, right? You're going to die, right? But similarly, you cannot feed your spirit with materials. And I think one of the things, what's happening today, I think, is that we are divorced from the luxuries and the comforts of the world that we once had. Okay? The opportunities of the world has become more and more restrictive and tighter. And so what are we doing to cope? We get on social media to try to find any form of social engagement, and then we're like having sleeplessness because we're up in the night with a glaring screen and the light that's messing with our sleep, right? Inability to have sleep, or we're having addiction to these things. We're having people that are eating a lot more, right? Grocery consumption is going up, but so is ice cream and chocolate and all sorts of things, right, that are happening because we're looking to compensate or self-medicate, right, in a time when we actually can use this as an opportunity. Right? عَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُ شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. Perhaps you hate something, but it's got good in it for you, خير for you. وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Allah knows and you do not know. عَجَبًا لِأَمْرِ الْمُؤْمِنِ إِنَّ أَمْرَهُ كُلَّهُ خَيْرٌ وَلَيْسَ ذَاكَ لِأَحَدٍ إِلَّا لِلْمُؤْمِنِ. Amazing is the matter of the believer. Everything for him or her is khair, right? How do we make use of it? I think we need to disconnect in order to reconnect. We've been forced to disconnect in some ways, but we're like, the addict that gets that your charge on your phone is finishing and you start to itch and you're like, hey, is there a plug somewhere? Right? In an airport, you have to find plugs everywhere. Why? Because we can't stand that this thing turn off. Okay? That we be disconnected. But you know what happens when you're disconnected? You're alone with your thoughts. You're alone with your emotions. You're alone with all of the things that you have not been paying attention to. And what happened? And even more so, you're alone with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which maybe I'll speak for myself, haven't been paying attention to. Right? And I think this is an opportunity to be bored. People, what do you mean be bored, right? there is something healthy about being bored. We're in a society and a time where we seek overstimulation all the time. We need to be stimulated. And then we have ADHD and manic episodes and addictive behaviors. And then when we don't have these things, what happens? We have a reaction, an addictive kind of depression when you don't take a candy away from a child. And what happens? They're sad for about an hour or so, right? And when we've gotten our big candy taken away from us, our ability to go to restaurants, our ability to, drive things and whatnot, but this is an opportunity to disconnect in order to reconnect. It's an opportunity to disconnect, be in khalwa. Khalwa is a solitude. They say, some of the mashayikh say, spend some time each day in solitude to recollect yourself. Right? To orient, to recollect your mind. We have this clutter. We can't turn off our minds. Our minds are spinning. But you know what? If we're spinning through tweets and we're spinning through all of this visual stimulation, you can't even read a book. Because why? Your book is not jumping out at you. It's not these colors and things that are stimulating all of the different parts of your brain and neurochemistry and eliciting all this dopamine and serotonin and high, canned spirituality, as one of the, mashayikh would say. But what we want to do is disconnect and allow yourself the opportunity to be able to feel the pain, but you will start to taste it over time. You will detox. Just like a person who takes, what happens if you eat a big fat gulab jamun, or a baklava, or whatever cultural reference of your choice for the sweets that you eat, right? Eat that big ball of sugar, and then right after that, eat a strawberry. How does that strawberry taste? It's sour. It's sour, isn't it? It doesn't really taste that sweet because we've messed up your capacity to be able to enjoy something very natural. People go outside and they don't look around. They're walking on their phones, right? Why? Because we've become artificial. And I think it's an opportunity for us to disconnect. And the more and more you stop eating all this sugary stuff, the more and more you're going to start to have an appreciation for those fruits. And so I think this is an opportunity for us to detox. And I encourage all of us to get off of all of this stuff as sort of like plugins, right? Or surrogates or self-medication while we're doing what? Waiting for the vaccine, right? While we're waiting for the vaccine. But we don't really need to wait. Well, this is the nature of anxiety. It makes you think. Imam Ghazali says anxiety is a notion of fearing something into the future. We don't need to fear about the future. We can focus on Allah is with us right now, right? And we have these opportunities right now. And so those are the things I think that we want to focus on. And of course, if it becomes unbearable, then professional resources are out there. And if it wasn't clear in the previous, what I had mentioned about Ghazali's twofold, so the traditional mode, and then he highlighted a non-traditional method, but it's still kind of traditional. And that is more of the spiritually integrated, what I would frame as therapy or your mental health providers that integrate spirituality, like Dr. Rahimi, like others, like Khalil Center, like others that are out there to be able to help with acute distress. Of course, we need assistance in this pathway. It's not so intuitive all the time. Or sometimes there's methods, sometimes there's a need to want to discuss this in order to unlock some of that potential or get all of that stuff out into the open so that you can sift through it, right? And I think those, so we can utilize those avenues to be able to do these things.